Tossing a precious stone to the Zorn and pointing at the Bodak to distract it, Norman slips by into the light from this mysterious doorway. He finds himself in a dark tunnel, the walls kind of twisty and textured in a sort of way that is horribly reminiscent of biological matter or go hard and cold to the touch. As he proceeds, he sees a faint red light up ahead, and he can hear a faint sort of pumping noise. The room opens up into a sort of relatively wide, cold room. There's a central sort of altar in the middle, a raised stone platform with grooves cut into it, and 6 glass tubes line the wall, and this is where the pumping noises come from. You can see a thick, red, viscous liquid churning inside, and here's a faint noise coming from them. Stepping close to one of the tubes, an eye opens up inside the glass, and the glass itself billows out like a balloon and shatters, spilling out on the floor this red liquid. A mass of teeth and mouths, eyeballs poking out from within. The gibbering noise it makes now much louder. Norman leaps up onto the stone table in the center, and he's confronted with a Gibbering Mouther. Welcome to Gibberators. Challenge Raters.
Where we rate mouths.
We rate mouths. It's a D&D themed, D&D centric show where we talk about a D&D monster while I illustrate it. My name is Theo.
I'm Neil, and I gibber.
I'm Sam, and I have a mouth.
We all have mouths, and we don't have to scream, but we could if we wanted to. I could scream.
You were about to scream, Theo. I know you. You were about to scream.
I was very much thinking about screaming.
It'll max out the microphone. You can't.
That's the thing. I feel like it would. I was gonna step back. It is quite late. We do record in the evening times. That has not stopped me in the past from screaming. Anyway, we're not the scream.
I could just sense the scream energy.
Anyway, there's a moth in my room.
Yeah, there's a moth in my room now.
Gibbering Mouther.
I don't mind moths actually. The only bug I will not tolerate is a mosquito. Why there's only like one D&D mosquito enemy. Anyway.
Yeah, sturgeon.
There's so many frogs. And there's so few, bugs, and they're all the bugs have lobster claws. Anyway, moving on. That's getting cut. Snip that. Cut that, put it in the bin, trash.
Cut
nice.
Number 1.
I guess I'll talk about, the generic things that the Gibbering Mouther is. But yeah, the Gibbering Mouther, as I sort of described, is a big, wet pile of mouths and eyeballs that makes it sort of mutters. And it's a D&D classic, I feel. I think this has been in the game forever. I'm pretty sure this is a first edition monster. This is one that I think has been pretty much the same throughout the entire game. It's always had the same kind of abilities as well. Basically, the idea behind the Gibbering Mouther is, it's a very useful, broad idea, which is someone, presumably an intelligent creature, has been transformed by foul sorcery. And then in the book, in 5th edition at least, it kind of lists, maybe it learned something from the far realms, which is kind of the... D&D has multiple versions of space. There's realm space, which is literally space. Then there's the astral plane, which is, magic space. And then there's the far realms.
I really don't know what happens if you build a rocket in D&D and fly into space. I really have no idea.
Yeah.
Just never let your players do it. Just don't worry about it. They'll never get a rocket. It's fine. If they want to build a rocket, they've got to know how a rocket works. So basically the Gibbering Mouther doesn't have a specific origin. It's just some nasty magic's gone on. Usually, I think it's meant to be kind of an accidental thing, hence the sort of chaotic thing about it. But I don't think there's any reason you couldn't have it be something that is kind of like when we were talking a while ago about the slithering tracker, where it was a deliberate ritual that has been gone through. I feel like this could be very related to that in a ritual gone wrong, or this because the slithering tracker had that whole thing where it's if your will is good and if you really want vengeance, but maybe this is hey, if you weren't actually all that into it, maybe if you have second thoughts and it fails and you become one of these, the person who's transformed kind of just melts into a puddle, which is very eldritch horror stuff. There's a lot of that sort of thing Lovecraft and things inspired by his work, where just knowing the wrong thing, hearing the true name of something, I feel that's like a good way you could like have something transform into Mouther. Like they hear about Jubilex, they learn about the existence of Jubilex, and then they go and they just melt into a thing in front of you. That'd be pretty gross, but it would also kind of show off the power of these things, I suppose.
Just from their description of their abilities, they are such an eldritch creature for an eldritch setting.
Sure, yeah.
Way better at that than a lot of the typical ones you would think that just have like a brain attack. This one is insanity.
The only other thing that like comes to mind immediately is like the Umber Hulk has its weird like ray that makes you do all sorts of weird stuff, but then the Umber Hulk itself is a big, muscly bugman with lobster claws. So yeah, the Gibbering Mouther, it has a couple things in its like general description before we get to the actual stats. Amoeboid form. Basically, I think the idea is that it's pretty slow, but it can't be slowed down, as it were. Like, it can move through mud and water and quicksand. Anything that's not, like, completely solid, it can kind of... It's coming for you at 10 feet per turn. But it's a coming. And it kind of describes how it sort of, like sticks out a little kind of slimy tentacle and pulls itself, and it sort of rolls over forward. So it's not really liquid, and it's not like an ooze. It's kind of somewhere between that and a like a living thing, which is kind of, I think it all really depends on how you describe it and how good you are at describing that can really make or break how scary you want it to be and how kind of gross you want it to be. What it doesn't really go into, and it's something that I find is weird about the Gibbering Mouther, is it's a medium creature, and like there's no larger one. Obviously there's nothing to say you couldn't make it a big one, but like I kind of, it kind of implies that they are, each medium one is like an individual thing and they don't really like mold together. I would kind of expect them to like puddle together, but there's anything about that. I don't know, that's just my immediate thought about it.
You can have an encounter where there's multiple ones, and if you let them get towards each other, they'll
like fuse together
and get real strong.
The opposite of the ochre jelly, where you split it in half. This one's getting bigger and bigger. That could be fun.
I mean, it has an ability about absorbing people, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. The main thing, the thing it's named for is, of course, it's gibbering. It's got loads of mouths, and they all kind of, again, like it's. I don't think it specifies that they have to be complete nonsense words. Like, I think you can have fun and slip in a few phrases in there, kind of crazy phrases, hinting at whatever you want to be hinting at as the DM. They've learned some horrible secret that you want the players to like figure something out towards, but you don't want to just tell them. So the Gibbering Mouther whispers something crazy about it, and if they're paying attention, maybe they'll
just want to make a note.
Make a note, hopefully. But again, I think the idea is that it's just nonsense.
It's just terror. Like everyone that's a part of it doesn't like being a part of it.
Exactly, yeah.
I think if you're gonna have it tell something, you got to structure it in Dark Souls dialogue terms.
Oh sure, yeah, definitely. It's not something that they can talk to, but I think it's something that could talk at them as it's trying to eat you. Kind of thing. And maybe like even it could like maybe someone was driven mad by a riddle in like a puzzle in a dungeon, and they repeat the riddle over and over and over again, and maybe then the players can then figure it out.
You could do horrific things like one of the mouths is lucid.
Yeah, that's always true. I don't know if you guys have seen Full Metal Alchemist, but there's a bit where there's a big pile of souls guy, and it's unclear because the souls are like growing like, oh, free us, please, and it's like it's kind of unclear if they are if the character is manipulating them to say things to make the main character like feel bad, or if they are literally unwilling to be part of this. So you can play around that sort of stuff. I think it's very reasonable. But yeah, basically, if you get too close and start hearing this stuff too clearly, because I like that idea that from a distance it just sounds like nonsense gibbering, but when you get close enough, that's when it's because it does have a minimum range. It's not actually too far. But when you're close, the gibbering can kind of mess with you. It has some effects that it can do that we'll go into. And the final thing in its pre-stat block little introduction, all-consuming. So the first thing about it is if it eats you, it'll absorb you, and like your mouth will be added to it. So like that's good stuff. So you could have like a very old one that's big and has hundreds of mouths. I think the idea of having a quite young one that's just like a couple is kind of gross, because then it's like a big flesh bag with like one. Like that's pretty gross.
Gibbering mouth.
Just one, yeah. So that could be pretty gross. And I know that there is I think it's in a book, there is a Gibbering Mouther character that is like a mile long. And it has like a wizard's face just at the end of it. He's like I think he got turned into a Gibbering Mouther, but he managed to retain his individuality or something. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So the idea of one getting very big, at that point it could be quite an interesting sort of a herald of things to come, perhaps.
Or a terrain.
Exactly, yeah, it's true. But speaking of terrain, the other thing that the all-consuming thing does, and I think this is the most difficult thing to like figure out, especially if you're just like, oh, this seems like what I want, and then you read this and like, what? Wherever the Gibbering Mouther like is, every like surface it touches becomes doughy and like soft and liquefies. So like basically the function of it is to provide difficult terrain around it. So I guess making it harder to get away from the gibbering. Like, okay, cool, good stuff. But how does that work? Now obviously it's magic, but like it's I think it's very weird, and I think it's not bad, but I think you have to really decide on what it's doing before you. If you don't think about it, it'll just seem sort of like, oh yeah, everywhere it is liquefying. Because then people are like, okay, do I leave a handprint in the stone, and then when it dies, does it solidify? Does it like all spring back? But I don't know. It's a weird one.
Yeah, does the creature swim? Because if all terrain around it is liquid.
Yeah. The way I end up thinking about it, and this is actually relevant to one of its abilities that we'll get into when we go into it, is that I think there's like three main ways that I was thinking about it. You got your Gibbering Mouther. It's either high magic, so it liquefies things because magic, or it's like eldritch, it's like bending reality kind of stuff.
Not meant to be.
Or it's incredibly chemical.
Yeah.
And it's literally like dissolving things because of it. And I think if you're going for maybe a lower magic kind of thing, that could work, but I think they're all kind of difficult to work with, and I didn't really illustrate it in my thing. I kind of mentioned it in a little bit with like the glass kind of like stretching and then shattering when it gets to a certain point, but there's no way to draw a rock being a liquid that looks like that, as opposed to like just being, what I mean? It's hard to draw a rock being liquefied, but not melted, like, into lava.
I just want to say this idea while it's on my head.
No, sure, yeah.
We always talk about making stuff from monsters, right, and how we love it.
Sure, yeah.
It would be great if parts of a Gibbering Mouther, like the goo maybe, could be used to make stone shape. Or
like harvesting stuff. Yeah,
like maybe it's like actual being... is what does it. Then the alchemical element would be really cool, because then it could be like, oh yeah, I get it. Or just having some of this creature's entity warps the stone away from it when you cast it, like,
sure, yeah.
That could be really cool.
It could be a fun little puzzle-solving thing as well, just like, you got enough to like make 5 foot of stone become pliable for however long.
Where do you dig?
Make a door with that, whatever. Yeah, that could be cool.
I can mouth for a little bit about its stats. It
I'll
has
just gibber in the background.
Very little AC, 9 in fact, which is very low.
That's pretty low.
It does have 67 hit points, which is a pretty decent hit pool considering it's only challenge rating 2 creature.
That's high, yeah.
So obviously, if you're putting it in on its, if you're putting it in against a party of level 2s, I mean, actually, it'd be pretty horrendous to. Well, yeah, we'll go through some of the bits it does later on, but that'd be pretty scary.
The AC will save that, but then again, like even at low level, Arm class 9, it's not the lowest. It's not like a gelatinous cube where it's got like 3 or whatever. It's low, but
yeah. I mean, anything single digit, like they're going to be they'll be hitting it.
They'll be hitting it most of the time.
Even if they got like 75% of the time, they got like a +5 to hit or a +4.
Yeah.
Its speed is 10 feet, but its swim speed is also 10 feet, obviously. So it doesn't get slowed down at all by anything. It's not particularly strong or dexterous. It has a lot of con to back up that kind of big health pool. It can take a beating. It's not smart. It's insane. Yeah, it's an insane consuming beast. Can't be knocked prone.
That's important. That's important thing to note. Yes,
makes sense. I don't see how you better knock down slime. I assume all the slimes have that.
I think most of them do, right? Because that's the thing. Because it's not technically an ooze; it's an aberration, right?
Yeah.
But then looking at its stat block, it is like a better version of most of the like ooze stats. It has like a tiny bit of charisma. It has a tiny bit of int. It hasn't got 1 int like a lot of oozes do. It's got a flat wisdom and stuff, so it could. There are many oozes have much worse.
Yeah,
I think strictly in the lore,
sure.
These creatures and oozes and everything, they all actually come from one even bigger umbrella.
Right.
Like I think it's all tied to do with like a dead drow god or something.
Oh,
like,
okay, right.
Basically, loads of the weird chaotic shit is all from that guy.
Right.
And like and like other synonyms for him is like Jubilex and stuff like that. Like
okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
Again, I would not. If someone was doing like a whole Jubilex thing, I would not think it was wrong to use a Gibbering Mouther at all. I think that would be very appropriate.
No, it's horrific because it's like because a Gibbering Mouther is someone turned into a slime rather than a slime that's existed.
The aftermath of Ooze Town.
The other things to note, I guess, is it's got dark vision 60 feet.
Sure.
You know, everything has dark vision in D&D.
Like everything, yeah. Pretty much.
Every player race does. Languages, it just leaves blank, so it doesn't specify languages like the people knew in life or anything, but like doesn't really matter really. You can play it how you want to. I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Yeah.
But apart from that kind of covers its pure stats, and then you obviously get into the abilities that it has. We've already talked about the Aberrant Ground, which it could be pretty bad. I mean, it makes it difficult terrain. If they fail a DC 10 strength check, they can't move at all.
That's the thing, yeah. I feel like in 5th, once everyone gets stuck in, people don't move anyway. So I feel like difficult terrain stuff doesn't... It will matter, like, 2 times out of 10. It'll matter 1 out of 5 times, right? It'll matter that something has difficult terrain, but most of the time they'll run into melee range with it and they'll try and hit it till it dies.
Well, with the Mouther it matters.
Sure.
Because of gibbering.
Yes.
Oh, well, that is true, yes. That is a fair point too.
Its main unique ability, and there's a little bit of text here, but any creature that starts its turn within 20 feet has to make a wisdom save, and on a failure the creature can't take reactions to the start of the next turn, and they roll a d8 to determine what they do on their next turn. With a 1 to 4, there's 50% chance of you just doing nothing.
So basically like a stun, yeah.
Yeah, a 25% chance to take no actions or rotations and use all your movement to just randomly move. I guess you get a scatter die out, the best dice in the game that isn't really in the game, but
it's not in 5th, but like sure,
and
you
then
figure it out somehow. Yeah.
On a 7 or 8, so another 25% chance, you'll just make a melee attack against a randomly determined creature within range, or you do nothing if you can't make that attack.
Sure, yeah.
It's basically like confusion's been cast on you.
Yeah, basically.
And especially because like the DC's only 10, it's not crazy bad or anything. But again, it's interesting and it is like their main thing. And as you say, with the Aberrant Ground stuff is to try and make that happen more. It's to try and get people stuck within its range more often, I suppose.
Once you realise that you can keep out of its range because 20 feet isn't super long, you can just poke it to death and it can't it can't catch you.
And it gets very deadly once you get 2 or 3 or 4 of these things because it's multiple saves to get you stuck, multiple saves to make you fail.
That is true. That's something I'm bad at remembering is like when multiple things are applying like saves at a time. That's actually a thing. When I was looking up legacy stuff about it, it was very specific on one of the wikis that said like it's rare for them to be in groups. I was like, but this is not something that you wouldn't really use this on its own necessarily. There's obviously situations in which you would, and I did, but like it's to me this is like a really good like. We've entered the wrong room in the Resident Evil dungeon, and then suddenly there's like 10 of these in a room.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus! And I would even describe them as all being perhaps one thing, and still run them as like different things technically, but have like the floor be covered in like a thin layer of it kind of thing. And if you do like digital maps and stuff, you could even make the bottom of the map like sync up with the token in an interesting way. I feel like that could be cool. Anyway.
Definitely. I guess one thing to note about when they come to actually doing damage, they do a lot of damage.
Actually, what? You know, I didn't even like remember.
They do. For challenge rating 2, I mean, it's only a +2 to hit, so it's really it's quite unless
so
pretty
it's a
light.
Yaz. So it's a Yaz.
It's unplus to hit.
It's completely useless.
Doesn't do does more damage in him though. Don't forget.
God damn.
Sorry.
Didn't realise this was turning into a roast, but
I think anytime we're gonna start reading numbers to hit, it's gonna come up.
I guess so.
Anyway,
so it said okay. So if it hits, it's
yeah.
gonna do 5d6 piercing damage.
That's a big mouth it's got with full of pointed teeth.
And there's also
bite attack,
and then there's a DC strength save to not be knocked prone. Also, if you are killed by it, you get absorbed, which I guess just means your character's gone. Like
yeah. I guess only like I'm surprised it doesn't specify like
anything about like
resurrecting stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess it just your body is destroyed.
Yeah.
So you would need something like a wish spell to get a new body and then a resurrect to get it back up. So I don't know if you still need a body for true resurrection, right?
You could also do something kind of more horrific if you didn't want to go that far. You could have that person lose their mouth.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Or even if you just a more minor thing like lose limbs and stuff to like have them like sucked off it, like that could be quite horrific.
Definitely an angle to go for if you're going to use this monster because it's horrific.
Yeah, I think it does make an interesting sort of like just sort of gross dungeon filler thing, but I think its potential is in shocking, as it were, and not like in a it's. It's kind of campy shocking in a way because it's like, it's like a big part of oozy mouth. Like, it's kind of, all right, it's people are used to that sort of thing. But I think if played well, if you lose an arm in D&D, that's way worse than in like other. You can't just save and reload. Anyway.
It does have multi-attack and after its bite, things. If it can, it will also use its blinding spittle, which...
this is the other weird one, yeah.
So is this implying that it spits in the ground and it all like and the globular spit like explodes into your eyes?
It's like one of those little firework like pellets that you chuck at the ground and it goes bang. This is the other thing when I was thinking about the three different versions of it being chemical, magic, or like eldritch, right? Because like if it's chemical, I can see the idea of it spitting and that reacting with the ground because that is like a thing. Like there's all the sodiums or whatever that they all burn when they hit water and stuff. So I can imagine that really easily as a chemical perspective. Like that works really well. And also conversely, could be a cool alchemy ingredient, for example, if people are harvesting monster bits. And then like for magic, obviously it's very straightforward. I wouldn't have, if I was doing it like straight up magic, I would probably just have its spit be like blinding as opposed to like has to hit the floor next to you. That's really weird.
Some of the eyes will start murmuring a spell,
Yeah. And then for the Eldritch, you could like describe how like you see like starlight.
I was
and,
about
like,
to say Bloodborne.
Yeah, exactly. Really like good old cosmic stuff. But yeah, it's a weird ability. It really is kind of out of nowhere. And I've never seen like any illustrations of this ability, but it has always been in there as far as I'm aware.
And what's quite interesting to me about its multi-attack. I don't see this very often in a description where the Gibbering Mouther makes one bite attack, its regular attack, and if it can use its Blinding Spit, it does, because Blinding Spit is a recharge, which means it can only do it. It has to recharge a really good point.
Because how often do you use a monster and then you're like, I want to use its unique thing, but also if this guy's only got like 2 rounds in him, then like...
I have found myself always letting it do its recharge ability and its regular attacks for every single monster that's ever in the book. So I would have nearly every single monster have this anyway. But it's quite interesting that this one has it written down like that. I just thought that was something to point out.
Yeah, no, I think that's it is definitely kind of different for that. Yeah, so is it recharge 5 and 6 as usual, and then it can blind you. And usually I would say like, blinding that sucks, but there are worse things. But recently I've had some real trouble with you guys blinding things, and blinding is pretty bad. And it is like an AOE and stuff. I think especially because it has the difficult terrain stuff, it really comes down to how you've designed the area it's in. If it's in a big empty room, people will be able to walk around it, like, no problem, and avoid grouping up too much. But in like a narrow corridor, nasty little room, then it's going to get people with its blind. It's going to get people stuck in its dough-like ground.
It could be quite interesting if you did some more with its blinding ability, because of how else is someone going to navigate when like the ground is warping underfoot and they can't see, and they also can't hear because there's incoherent babbling everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
it feels like it should be an ability that maybe gets worse.
Right.
You know, like if you're blind and in the goo aura, then
right. Yeah. If you're affected by all of these things, that could be cool. It's 3 abilities. They almost sync up. The blind obviously is always good because if you hit something, then and its blind advantage and all that. But and the gibbering and the ground work together, obviously. But I guess knock prone with the bite. I feel that's a weird one, the bite knocking you prone. But I guess it's like you get sucked into the ground, or you trip as the ground's like gooey underneath you and stuff. That's reasonable. But yeah, I guess have we got any fringe use cases? I think so far it sounds like we think this is an interesting one.
Using it with other monsters is like, I mean, if you're using it with other oozes, This ooze actually, if you treat it as an ooze, which again it isn't strictly, but it kind of is.
Yeah, it doesn't have that fit through a 1 inch gap thing that
No.
most oozes have, but other than that, it's pretty.
And it has
easy.
eyes and mouths and stuff.
Yeah.
If you use it with the other oozes, it could be quite interesting that it has an ability to slow people down, so all the other slow oozes can actually catch up.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. You know, like this coupled with a gelatinous cube.
Yeah. I think that it would definitely lessen the horror of it
Yeah.
to do that sort of thing, but it would be fun.
You could do it, put purely comedy, you know, where the mouths are like, you know, brother's gonna eat you.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're doing like a duplex thing as well, having it gibbering constantly and then like on its last round, it duplex directly speaks through it at you. Like that could be a good thing.
I think that's another advantage actually to it in that circumstance, is it actually has mouths, whereas every other ooze enemy is just a blob that will squish towards you.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
You need ooze cultists to deliver any sort of talk from them.
It could be really interesting as well to maybe have a cult. Again, the cult idea just went in my head. A cult that has one of these, like, you know, like 30 feet away from them, right? And they just worship its gibbering.
And Kuatoa. We've talked. I think any monster that's stronger than a Kuatoa, you can say, Kuatoa could worship, but they could really worship one of these. I feel.
Yeah. And they're following all its insane tenets that it's like.
Yeah.
Garbled.
That could be cool. And it's just misheard stuff anyway.
Maybe it's stuck down their well.
I think they've got a misheard Bible of the Gibbering Mouther. It's just a bunch of like interpretation from what's written down. That could be fun. And I think anytime you got like a lich or like an evil wizard having some of these around experimental kind of stuff, that works. Again, that Resident Evil lab section where you fought all the zombies in the village and then you go down an elevator and you're suddenly in Umbrella Laboratory where everything's shiny. Shiny and chrome.
Shiny and
Chrome. Yes.
Fully filling Dead Space, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think very alien, but also, you know, it can kind of fit in a lot of places, which I like. And of course, I did, when I was drawing this, I decided, like, the next day after sketching it originally, I was like, I'm going to put one in, because I have a place coming up where it'll be good, and it would work. At least I think so. But yeah, other than that, I think it is very straightforward. You wouldn't really, like, you could start like having it talk, but I don't think anyone really wants to make friends with this sort of thing or talk for it too long.
I don't think they can.
Don't play it good.
And you'd have they can't by the rules. And
it's something else.
It's not worth. There's other better things for that sort of thing. This is the kind of creature that you pit. If it speaks, you pity it, as it were, and you want to, like, you know,
end it.
It's the thing that you're doing is you're killing it so that all the gibbering stops, and you could even have them, you know, like, say, "Oh, thank you," no, the last dying words of as they regain any sort of semblance of sanity, kind of thing, and you know that can be good and stuff. Pretty cliche, but you know sometimes cliches are good.
Terrible fate of an NPC who's been absorbed by one.
Yeah, that would be grim as hell, but
you recognise his eyes or something.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this art, by the way. It's
his art is wild.
It took, as you could tell, why it took a while. Probably because there's lots of lines.
There's a lot of lines, yeah.
And the background took a while because it's an indoors. With perspective. Anyway, it's fine. I spent too long on it, so I got annoyed at it, but that's okay. There's a lot of other simple things going on.
It is insanity, this, like, the actual, like, mouths and spread of it. I really like it.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I kind of like this one. I think we were talking about, I didn't used to care much about this one, but I do quite like it now. I didn't want to mess it up too bad. Once you've used it once in a campaign, it's not one that you can bring out a couple times, but I also probably think that's true of most monsters. Like, you're not going to reuse a monster too much, I don't think. Necessarily, at least. Especially something that's very unique like this. You'd probably deploy it strategically, and it'll be effective then. And the more you use it, like, the less... And this is true for a lot of things, but I think especially something like this...
Yeah, it's definitely a one and done, I think.
Yeah.
Or you can reskin what it actually looks like to something very similar.
No, that's true. Yeah, of course, that's very true. Especially if you're going for like a more of an ooze thing, or even like more of a bloodborne like pile of corpses thing. This could be like an interesting undead like pile. Yeah.
I just realised where I used mine. I used one in a necromancer tower.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. I think that's probably pretty good use, actually. Pretty clever. I guess we should give it a number.
A number.
Oh,
A
we're so out of
number.
practice at this.
I know, it's been a while. I think it's good. Like, it's not... I would say that, like...
You're saying plus 10 then?
It's above 10, yeah, definitely. I think so, because looking at like its stats and stuff, it does everything that it's kind of meant to do, which is usually what we're judging for. I will say that maybe the damage versus its plus to hit is weird. It's quite easy in 5th to have like 15 or more AC, even from like first level. So having a plus 2 to hit, this guy might not ever do a lot of damage. But then if it does hit, that's the thing, but then it might hit someone at lower level and then instantly kill them.
You could wipe a party.
Yeah.
That's the thing, yeah. The gibbering is cool. I would say that the effects that it has are... There's not many things that make you move in random directions and stuff, and there's no mechanic for determining that, as far as I'm aware in 5th.
I think there's something with a D8 or D10 in the...
It's almost a random table, which automatically gives it plus points.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it feels like an early one. Again, like we were talking about with the Chimera, when we were saying, like... It's almost there, but then like there's not thought has been put into it like later with like having a different effects. Again, most of the time it's going to stun you, which is like fair enough. I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more like wacky stuff on there, but maybe that's just because I do like a random table. And the blinding spit is weird, but I think that's not a bad thing for this one. Like it's meant to be weird.
And using them in conjunction with each other, just an idea that just crossed my mind. Literally, could be cool as if you put two gibbering bells in the same room. If they just get louder and louder, trying to argue with each other, or like shout over each other, then that could enhance them somehow, and you could make a tougher one.
When I think of like Eldritch horror stuff, but maybe the point is against a lower level party, it will be horrifying because it's tough. Like, they'll hit it, they'll wail on it, they'll hit every attack for like 2 rounds. They'll be like, yeah, this thing's nearly dead. And you're like, no, it's not even bloodied. And they'll be like, ugh. So maybe having it being like kind of weirdly proportioned in like power is part of the scary thing about it, I guess. Maybe I might be just talking myself around to a weird opinion about it though at this point.
I mean, how do you kill it with iron swords?
That's the thing, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if giving this resistance to like non-magic weapons could be that's a nasty way to improve it, but it definitely would make sense.
Who's to say it can't grab them in its teeth?
The number I have in my head and my heart is 14, which I think is a very common number that we give out.
I think that's too high for me.
Yeah?
Yeah, I also...
Where would you guys go?
I get the 14, I really do, but I think I would go...
I'm willing to be talked down. I'm not super passionate. That's just like my
personally,
weird gut
I would go 12 because it's definitely better than an average monster because nearly everything it has is unique.
Yeah.
It's unique to it. It's a very classic monster. It's very memorable if it's done right.
Sure.
But I feel it could be really easily done wrong and be really underwhelming because all its DCs are just 10. It's got a +2 to hit and it's slow.
Yeah.
Like, say, I know from a game that we've got going on right now, I think, like, Nayla's character in one of our D&D, she's a ranger, at, like, level 4 or 5, she could basically one-hit this thing.
Oh, very close, yeah.
And kite it forever. And we wouldn't have to do anything.
We could literally just sit there and pass our turns.
I think that's actually a good point. If this thing was strong, like actually like scary strong, I think I would like it. Because I like the idea of it being strong and scary for like a really low level party, but you wouldn't be able to use it against a low level party because it will, like odds are, instantly kill someone if it hits them, and that's not really...
It's not really fun.
Not really fun, yeah.
If it was challenge rating 10 and had the balls to back it up.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I want 2 versions. I want Gibbering Mouther, like lone splat one, and then I want like Elder Gibbering Mouther. I want like Gibbering Scream or like Screaming Mouther. I don't know. Yeah. I want a big one.
The Gibbering Choir.
Bastard.
A big mass that like fills a room.
Yeah, like a really like awful thing
and
to fight.
It has pseudopods.
Yeah, it's got some pseudopods. It bites. Who needs those? Real pods.
Not even real pods. So it can, and they have reach, and then it can slap people and bring them in.
I'd be happy to like go down to a 12.
I'm happy. I was thinking 13, but I'm happy.
13. That's fair.
I mean, 13's in the middle of all our numbers.
That is in the middle. I wouldn't mind splitting the difference because I think the potential of it is higher than a 12.
I'm more than happy for a 13.
Cool.
I win.
No, that's good. Yeah, you got it. You got it right on the money. But I've already used one, so I can never use one again. Now that's not true because now I could use a bastard one. I could make the gibbering bastard.
Oh, I dread the day.
CR20. That'd be kind of cool. Anyway, right. Well, yeah, we've looked at the art already. We've had a chat about that. It's there. Look at it. He's got all those things. I regret giving him a weird false metal hand because I keep drawing it differently. He'll not have that next time. Maybe he'll lose it in the next encounter he has. Of course, this thing, luckily for Norman's got 30-foot movement.
So he's fine.
He does meet the strength requirement for his chainmail. So he will be able to just run away from this thing. That's the thing, yeah, if there's not a locked door, you can just leave.
Yeah.
You can just walk away from it.
Really easy.
Anyway, that's a fair point.
All it can do is spit at you.
That's true, yeah. So yeah, Norman's he's covered his eyes, he's resisted the blind, he's gonna hightail it, he's gonna keep running down these sort of weird, lumpy corridors into a new encounter, further into the belly of this strange shift from what was a sort of rocky ruin into a sort of shiny underground lab sort of a thing.
It's kind of weird, actually.
It's kind of weird now I think about it. Anyway, I guess we should make jokes about the Gibbering Mouther. And now, before anyone starts saying things like, leave your gibberings in the comments below, or don't go mouthing off in the comments.
Well, what else we got?
That's a fair point.
Moving your mouse across the screen is an aberrant terrain, so you can get right down there to the like button pretty easily.
Yeah, got full movement with that. Was this video from Blinding Spittle? Can you still see the screen?
Can you just see the subscribe button?
Can you see it? Did we blind you with our spit?
Did we blind you with our radiance?
What's that from? Do I dazzle you? That's from Twilight. Do I dazzle you?
Were you blinded by its majesty?
There'll be another video at some point. Believe it.
That'll happen.
That'll happen. Don't worry about it.
Not on my
Subscribe for
watch.
more.